Hello, workmates. Welcome to Work and Talk in PH, your go to podcast for lifestyle insights, career convos, and real estate realness, where chill convos meet real life lessons because hashtag it works.
I'm Ron, and today we're joined by someone who plays a major role in the country's global services landscape. He's known for his people first leadership style, his integrity driven approach, and his active role in IBPAP and other industry networks that push the Philippines forward on the global stage. Please welcome Jimbo Borja to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here, Jimbo. Let's begin with your story. How did you first find yourself in the world of data? How did you end up in BPO?
Thanks again for inviting me here, no, Ronald, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to share maybe a little bit of my career and some of my thoughts when it comes to leading people or organizations for that matter. So just going back to the question that you had on how did I stumble in a career of data and insights, it did actually start really there on data and insights and even corporate leadership. My first job right out of college was I used to work for a bank. No, I used to work for Citi, and I was an individual contributor there in the retail branch banking team. So it was even far from data and insights. In fact, I ended up. How should I say it? No, my last position there was I was the head of marketing for new acquisitions for the retail branch banking team. So it was still marketing, and I was also doing a lot of sales, right? So that's where that's where my career originally started, from the banking side. And then later on, I dabbled into the IT BPM industry when my former colleague in City asked me if I wanted to join the industry and was going to head the program transition team, which meant selling a lot of our products and services as a BPO firm, right? And talking to clients. And then once that happens, the magic of setting up that program in the country was my main task. No? So I would talk to IT, to finance, to all of these other team members, training, HR, to kind of come up with that whole program to establish the actual work that we need for them. So that happened in a span of 14 years. So if you think about it, there wasn't really anything that was really focused on data and insights.
Right.
Still, and this is where the funny story is, in the twist in my career, is there was one point in time while I was working for EPLDT Ventus, who is a subsidiary of PLDT that later became SPI Global, right? We were talking to a client that we wanted to win. Okay. This client, the organization was named or is named SNL Financial. So cut the long story short, we didn't win that. Okay, we lost it actually to another. But a few years later, they went back. So they outsourced with this competitor, and they said they wanted to find someone who could lead the organization of SNL Financial in the Philippines by converting, okay, the outsourced arrangement into a captive one. So they wanted it to become in-house already, you know. They wanted it to become a global capability center. And when I spoke to them, they told me about the job, etc. Cut the long story short, I got that, and therefore I was now in the data and insights world, right? Because SNL Financial just did that, and then later on, SNL Financial got bought or merged with S&P Capital IQ, which now is S&P Global. No? Later on, Market Intelligence. And that's how I got to the world of data and insights. But in corporate leadership, right? Really, as soon as you leave, I would always say the formality of being a corporate leader if you comes when you become a manager. So even when I was back in City, when I got promoted to manager, that kind of started the formal corporate leadership. But in a sense that I would like to say this, that I think corporate leadership doesn't really have to have a title. If you think about it, right, in any kind of job or any kind of work or any kind of engagement that you do, corporate leadership or leadership in general can always be practiced. But again, no, a long answer to a very short question that you have, but I thought I'd put more context behind the journey into the world of data and insights, because it wasn't really that. I'm glad I'm back in S&P Global because from I graduated with a course in finance, and my first job was obviously in Citi, as I said, and now going back to S&P Global now gives me a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more relevance with the course and passion that I had when I started my corporate career. So yeah, there you go.
It definitely made sense. It's basically you saying that despite the changes and the different stages of your career, you find the concept of leadership applicable to all of it in some sense, right?
I do this talk, Ronald, and maybe just one last short thing. I always tell them that when you were growing up, I like making examples of times when we were back in college. So maybe I'm
Mm,
a frustrated teacher as well. And I think college is one of the, I guess, environments that you can say that you were truly authentic back then, because obviously when you work, you weren't really getting paid. It was more
yeah.
of an objective of trying to pursue a degree so that you can move on with life and do all of these things, right? So even then, right, I always go back to an example. Remember that time that you and your teammates were doing your thesis, right?
Yeah.
And then you would assign people as leaders, correct? And then when you
Correct.
assign people as leaders, leaders would think that, oh, as a leader, it's my job to make sure that I get to assign the tasks, right? And then I check them, and then when
Mm-hmm.
we're about to present, the job of the leader is to make sure that everyone has the role, or he or she is the last stop for that particular project. And I said,
Right.
okay, this is the example I have. How many times have you had this person in your group that asks you to do a certain part of the project in your thesis, or maybe not your thesis, and then you submit it to that person? And what that person does is that person either completely changes the presentation that you made, or changes something and says, oh, I'm such a great leader because I actually improved on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So later on that it didn't have to be in a corporate setting where you understood that, but I felt if that was done to me, that was more like an embarrassment on my part, because it felt like my job, or the contribution I made wasn't at all
Was.
appreciated. And in fact, that leader thought that he or she was doing a good job because he or she improved it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
technically you took away everything that was done by a certain person. And now you try to
Right.
do that in the corporate world. That's a big no-no, right? Because you have
Right.
to be able to develop people. You have to be able to empower. And so the leadership that you see really, no, doesn't even start in the corporate world. We'll have some form and fashion of that even back in high school, college, right? And all of the other things that you do when you're in sports. But the concepts of how we think being a good leader changes
Right.
over time. And I think
Mhm.
experience is what drives that, no?
Therefore, what would you say is your top quality for a good leader?
Well, again, no, I was thinking about this actually several times already when people would ask me this. No? And siguro before I answer that, people say that I want to demystify that thought process. Oh, I was born a leader. I don't think anyone is born a leader, right? You might have traits of being a leader, right?
Mm,
Let's say responsibility, or the willingness to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty and do these things and try to take over some of the tasks of trying to figure out where to go. These are traits of a leader, but no one is born like say, oh, but my dad was a leader before, my mom was a leader, therefore I'll be. It doesn't work that way, no. And as you go along the way, there are certain behaviors and I guess values, or even virtues, if you may, that you cultivate along the way. And for me, these ones are paramount regardless of where I guess the situation is. So let me try to explain. No? One of the things that I learned really quickly in being a leader, just like the example that I told you about college, is that one is pure respect. If you practice respect amongst your colleagues, amongst everyone, and that is one of the driving factors on how you carry yourself. Everything that you do will stem from that. Even if you were back in
mm,
college. I think if I were back in college and I was the leader and I took away that example, respect dictates that I tell the person first, hey, I took a look at your presentation and I think we can improve on it. I respect the work that you did. I respect the time that you put in, but I want you to know I want to improve on it. Right? That could have settled already. And now what have you
mm,
done also? Now you tried to open the lines of open communication, which is
right.
apparently a good trait also of a leader, right? Because you just don't do anything because, oh, I'm the boss. right? You want to
Right.
have kind of open communication, right? And then there are so many traits, right? For me, one of that is allowing people to be successful by empowering them, right? I think that is one of the things that exude a good leader's trait in terms of ensuring that people aren't really spoon fed, right? In
Mhm.
fact, you want them to be empowered so that they can go on their own. I never understood this until I got into the corporate world. There was a part where they taught us. It was still back in city. It was called coaching for high performance. So this is one of the traits. So you want to
Okay.
coach people for high performance, and what it really meant was it's not you doing the work for them, but you're providing the venue or the avenue or the opportunities or the skills that they can work on or hone so that they become successful themselves.
Mm,
So
mm.
I'll tell a story. I know this podcast is going to go public, but I normally say this in some of my talks here in the office. I remember back in college, and Marie Chris will get a kick out of this because we also went to the same college, the same university.
Okay.
Cut the long story short, I had so much fun in college, no? To a point where I even say that I'm an engineering dropout, no? Because I took 3 years of engineering before moving to finance. But in
Okay.
the school that I went to, I would always kind of fail subjects at the first go and then do really well on the second one. So to kind of, make up for.
Compensate.
I remember the first term, my dad found out that I had subjects that I failed, right? And like a regular parent, he got mad. He scolded me, and then he grounded me, right? He grounded me.
Okay.
Uh, so I went to my room, right? I was grounded and all of that. No? Typical. Second term, it happened again. Okay, of my freshman
Okay.
year. So he scolded me again. He scolded me again. Say the same thing. You're grounded. You can't go out. Okay. The third term, it happened again. I had another subject that I failed, no? And this time, to escape that session, that sermon, and the scolding, he asked me, so what are we going to do? Right? And in my
Okay.
mind, I said this, I will not go out anymore. I will not go to parties. I will study more and do the responsible thing. Right? I will study. I will not go out to parties. I'll improve on my grades. All of these things that make a studious person who is in the university or in college, right?
But that's just in your mind, right? You
No, I
haven't.
told him that. I told him that. So I actually blurted already because I didn't want him to give that same sermon, right?
All
You
right.
get sick and tired of the sermon, right? So I said it outright already. And to my surprise, he said, okay. And I was like, in my mind, that's it? Okay. No long 30-minute sermon, a one-on-one, man-to-man talk, right? And then I go back to my room, right? I sat down and did all of these things, etc. Later on, I learned what just happened. There was some kind of Jedi mind trick that has happened. But what I did not realize until I started working, until I actually went through this training of coaching for high performance, what he actually did was what a leader should do. A leader should never dictate the actions or consequences of a failure. For
Mhm.
example, because when that happens is a person can always say, I'm a son. Well, that was what you told me. I don't want to do that. But in this
Right.
case, when I said I was going to do it, the transfer of accountability is now on me, not on him. Right?
Then.
Because I said I wanted to do it. I said I
Mhm.
was going to do it. So it was my word now, not his.
Correct.
Right? You
Correct.
get it? So think about it now in the corporate setting. When you face challenges, when people fail on certain things as a leader, you don't scold that person and say, oh, you did this, this was wrong, blah, next time you want to do this. The question is, okay, what happened? Okay, so what do you think should we do?
Yeah.
Right? And then you, as a leader, because you're experienced all of the things that could probably help on the strategy, you guide that person to where you think you and her or him could go to become successful. And that's coaching for high performance. So later on, when that person is faced with adversity, his first mindset is to problem solve, not even to
Right.
go to you as a leader, right?
That totally makes sense because I think there are, I think in most cases, if not all, the problem with addressing such issues or concerns with, for example, non-performance and all that, is that you and your manager or subordinate are not on the same page,
Yeah.
right? You both, you're disconnected, you're not communicating properly. And as a leader who initially thought, I think that's traditional way of being a leader, dictate what has to be done. If there's a disconnect, it's so hard to bridge that gap, right?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of other factors. But then with your example, you basically let the coachee realize, right? Like you already know. Sometimes they just have to realize. They already know what they have to do, and they just have to accept it, right?
Correct. And I think the more important part there, Ronald, is when you try to, or when you effect such leadership, I guess, how should I say it? No, leadership behavior or coaching, what happens is you're actually developing that person to think on their own.
Yes,
And I think
that's
that's the
good.
most important thing, because if you keep spoon feeding, if you're not going to empower them, right? As a
Mhm.
leader, you want to see your team members become successful. And to me, that's one of the most fulfilling things when I see people become successful in their careers. They do things on their own and really, I mean, they succeed. That to me is one of the greatest feelings a leader or a mentor, if you may, can ever
Mhm.
have. So yeah, I mean, again, no, a very long answer to a very short question. That
No, but that gives a lot of context eh. Kasi di ba, there's really no one size fits all nowadays,
Yeah.
right? Actually, that I'm gonna bank on that first because we both agree, right? That particular situation demands that you let your coachee, as a coach, you let the person understand what he or she should have done, right?
Mhm.
Now, what would you have done in the case of, I don't know if you've experienced this before, but your trainee, for example, or your coachee is like, just tell me what to do.
I mean, it happens.
Right? Right?
It
It
happens.
happens.
It happens, right? It happens. And
I
I
don't want to
think
think.
before, yes,
I don't want
and
to
this,
think. I don't have
I
time
don't,
for that. I've
yeah,
tried. Just tell me
yeah.
what to do.
And I think, before you do that, the other part that I feel has kind of opened my eyes also, especially during the pandemic, no, is leading with empathy, right? When
Mhm.
you lead with empathy, you try to think about people, their well-being, and all of these things. Your approach also kind of changes. So when you say, when someone tells me that, Jimbo, I have no time for this, I want you to tell me what to do. Just tell me what you want to
Yeah.
do. When that happens, there are two things that come to mind. Okay, one is, why does that person? This is my knee-jerk reaction. Why is
Okay.
that? Even if I want to tell that person, I will not tell that person, because I think there is a deeper underlying reason on why that person doesn't want to think. And that's when you
Mhm.
start with empathy. Because that defeatist mindset, that person feels already that I can't solve this, I'm defeated, etc., and all of those things. I want to understand why that person feels that way, right?
Mhm.
And that's where the empathy comes in, where because you try to understand it. I think there's
Mhm.
a deeper reason, right? I am also a father. I have a son. He's 17 years old, right? And as he was growing up, I was teaching him a lot of the some of the schoolwork, or some of his assignments, for example, right? And more often than not, kids don't have the attention span or the patience to go through this, right? We've
Right.
all went
Right.
through it, right? And I'm so tired and all. And then, Dad, just tell me what to do, right?
Yes.
And then I would ask him, why do you want me? So I can just get finished. I could finish already. I can sleep, or I can move on to do whatever I want, right? So in that simple phrase or simple response, you already know the reason why he doesn't want to do it, because he is
Mhm.
impatient, he wants to finish, etc., or he's too tired, right?
Yeah.
So that's the underlying reason of why he doesn't want to do it anymore. So
Mhm.
now, I guess you see where I'm getting at, no? So you fast forward to the corporate world where we operate in, right? And when people say to you, for example, I don't have the time, I don't want to do it, just tell me what to do it or how to do it, two things come to mind. First is exactly like my son. Like, why that kind of mentality? Is there anything that, oh, because Jimbo, I have so many other things to do. I have to prioritize. If I still think of this, I won't be able to move on. And then I would say, okay, now I get it. So maybe we'll talk about it, not spoon feed exactly, but in my mind, either this person has to go through time management training, right? And prioritization. Or it also gives me feedback, which is very important, that this person might be overworked. Have we
Yeah.
looked at the workload? So you see now where I'm coming from. So rather than just spoon feeding or totally saying, "Oh, here's what we're going to do," my mind tells me there must be an underlying reason why this person is thinking this. Because there are
Mm.
challenges maybe from a development or knowledge standpoint. Second,
Mm.
that person might be too overworked. Or thirdly, also, maybe I have come across as a leader that just says it's my way or the highway. Therefore, it's feedback for me to change.
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So my mindset will always tell me there has to be an underlying reason why people are, I guess, averse or not that receptive to development, or in this case, not even development, but to the work that they do. So again, I don't know, Ronald, I hope that makes sense. No, but that's
No,
how I would
I think
approach it.
I think it's another. I think it's definitely a way to look at it. Yeah, because I think to sum up your case of how would you treat it, becoming empathetic with such response is, this person may just be frustrated, and that's blocking them to really be open and be more, what do you call that? Be more relaxed to think of a solution, right? However, I'm gonna give another, I guess the last example, because actually my next question is about challenges, but I think we've just covered the
Yeah.
most common challenges, right, in a corporate. You have someone who's disconnected with from between the coach and the coachee, and you also have someone who's frustrated, right? Too down to actually think. But my last question, one of I think I would consider as another basic and common challenge is, what would you do if the person is, say, not really that competent for the job, like does not meet the intellectual requirements?
Yeah, I mean, again, no, in our world or in the world of leadership, we can only do so much also. Okay. People ask me, I go back to my college days, no, was there anything that I have maybe is there a regret that I had, no? And sometimes I would think like, what would have happened if I really took my first few years in the university or in college very seriously? Would I have ended up becoming an engineer rather than
Mhm.
graduating in finance? Or would I have graduated on time rather than spending a little bit more because I failed subjects, so I became an irregular student, di ba? So there are a
Right.
lot of what ifs and regrets and all of these other things. And what am I trying to say? Maybe it was not meant for me to be an engineer. Maybe my intellectual capacity wasn't there, right? For example, because to your question, so maybe I was more
Right.
apt for finance. A side story, I had a colleague once, a client once, and he graduated with a degree in the US. I think it was aeronautic engineering with a major in physics or something to that effect, right?
Wow. Okay.
Exactly right. And then I told him, or I asked him, why did you go through that course? And he
Okay.
said, it's funny, he said, I see fluids. That was his response. I see fluids. I can see your face now, right? So I try. I said, it's like that movie of I see dead people, right? I don't know if
Right. Right.
you've seen that movie, that old one, the horror movie. But anyway, when he said he saw fluids, his first job was he worked for the Department of Defense of the U.S. and he was in the department on working on jet propulsion. So that's the missiles, right?
Yeah.
So he can see the chemicals mixing, and he could see how that kind of reacts, and the propulsion that happens from
Mm.
those mixtures of those chemicals is the trajectory of the missile. So he sees
Wow.
that. Wow, right? Wow. Like, so when I heard that, I felt so dumb. I was like, what the hell? What does that mean? I see fluids. I couldn't see anything. So for the longest time, that naman haunted me. But at the back of my mind, there are some people who are just probably born genius, right? Until
Mhm.
one day, and this just only happened maybe 5, 6 years ago, right? Someone asked me, because I graduated with a degree in finance, someone asked me, can you help me out, look at financial statements, and tell me what you think about it? And I said, of course,
Okay.
sure. Let's take a look at the different ratios. Let's look at your cash flow. Let's take a look at your balance sheet. And then I suddenly had a big grin on my face I
Okay.
might not see fluids, but if you show me
But
this thing, I can see the health of the company. I can see certain things within those numbers that give
right.
me, an insight on how a company or an organization is doing. So I didn't feel so dumb after that. No? So again, but why am I saying this? I'll just go back to the other one that you were saying, right? When you have people in your particular department that is not making the cut, again, my reaction there is not always that person does not have the intellectual capability or is not of sound mind or right mind for the job. It just maybe isn't a fit for that particular role. And when you try to have a people first mindset, or what we call here in the office now people forward, you want to make sure that one, we try to develop that person and see what those skills are. But again,
Mhm.
no, also empower that person to find his or her passion within the organization. Because
Mm.
more often than not, when you think about it, some people might struggle in certain roles within the organization, but when they find a path where they're passionate about, they know these things and all of that, they shine. They're like a
Mhm.
diamond in the rough, right? Because they're not doing
Right.
so. But when they move to another department, wow, fantastic, right? I've had people who weren't so good in data collection and data analysis, for example, but moved into a role in HR. Wow, fantastic, because that was his or her calling. Or someone
They're thriving.
who was working in operations and then found himself or herself on the talent development side. What a wonderful trainer and mentor, right? So the
Right.
things that you want to do is you try to find out how or what skills or this person might have and see where
Mhm.
you can match that. Now,
Mhm.
I also want to point the fact that it also doesn't happen all the time. For some people, and this has happened through the course of my, oh gosh, 26, 27 years of working, right? Wherein it just really isn't a fit, right? We've done everything and all that. And the sad reality of it, maybe I wouldn't even say sad reality of it, because sometimes the silver lining is it might be best to, unfortunately, or even fortunately, I would say, have to part ways. Because one,
Right.
that person is not being successful, therefore that person would probably be happy, right?
Mhm.
And second, if you prolong that, it hurts both the person involved, right? That person who's not performing, the organization is struggling, the clients are
Mhm.
going to suffer at the end of the day, right? As well as the
Yeah.
shareholders. So if we take a look at that balance, maybe it actually is best that the person part ways with the organization and find something better
Mhm.
that suits the ability and skill set of that person, right? So that person
Right.
can be successful and happy in the work that he or she does, right? Yeah.
Yes,
So
that's I totally agree with what you said. I mean, I guess it's really with your experience that you've been open to all these scenarios, right? From yeah, there's really cannot be done here. We just have to accept it and find the best way to let each other grow, I guess, and not further increase the impacts, right? Because it's affecting all sides of the of that box. So, well, it seems like you're really, really passionate. But I guess being in the corporate world for quite a while now, who has been your inspiration? I guess who's your ideal leader who actually you probably looked up to?
I don't have a, how should I say it, a very profound response to this. Oh, Nelson Mandela or like that, no. I won't even have presidents, for example, that I could quote as people that I look up to. But
Mm,
maybe what I want to share, and I've shared this with everyone that has asked me this particular question. I have been lucky to have very good mentors along the way. Okay. In Citibank, when I was back in City, mentorship was a staple of the culture. So my bosses back then, my managers back then, have paved the way for me and honed me to who I am right now. No, and it's funny because mentors along the way have different outlooks in life and how to do
yeah,
things at work.
that's true.
And you get the best practices that you feel have those no. And mind you, most of my mentors are women, right?
Wow,
Actually, if not all, most. Maybe I
most.
might out of maybe seven or eight. six of them are
Mm,
all
okay.
women. Very, very established, very, very powerful, and brilliant women who have their leadership roles, no, both in city and when I was in SPI Global and PLDT, and even to this day, no, we have that. One of the this may sound a little bit corny, but I always also look up to my wife, who I always have said that is a lot smarter and better than I am. She is really the better half, right? She is the voice of reason, and the reason I say that is, um, I don't know, she's able to compartmentalize certain things
Mm-hmm.
and very practical on the approach. No, even until today, she tells me that uh, when overwhelmed, you know, take a step back, right? Lay it out and take it one step at a time. And that was so powerful, really, really powerful, especially when things happen wherein you have no answer because you've never experienced it. Remember
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic when we all had to work from home? We had close to 1,000 people in S&P Global back then. And I remember she and I just came back from a trip. And when I got back to the Philippines, in 3 days, we were going to be locked down and all of
Mm.
us were still on desktops. Only the few senior leaders had laptops back then. No? So how were we going to get all of these desktops in the
Out.
place? The internet connectivity, the bandwidth, and all that. I was so
Mm.
overwhelmed because it was 3 days till the lockdown, and they were now starting to issue this QR passcodes of who can travel and not, and all of those things. No, and then that's what she said. Take a breath, take a step back. What do you need to do? Take it one step at a time. And then I started compartmentalizing that. And you know what? That gave me a clearer outlook on how to tackle that particular problem. And because of that, I was able to mobilize, not me. We were able to mobilize, not my wife, the organization. We were able to mobilize 1,000 desktops to our people in a day and a
Mm-hmm.
half, round the clock, without having to rely on rental transportation. The power of leadership and the power of what we call in the Philippines, bayanihan or
Mm-hmm.
genuine also and I guess yung malasakit, the genuine
Right.
compassion for amongst each other worked. So people were doing 4 or 5 trips, imagine, to bring the desktops of their colleagues to their particular
To them.
residence. Fantastic. And then until today, I get goosebumps telling this story because it was. If you tell me that I was going to be part of that team that could solve it at that time, I would have said, "There's no way I could do it. There was no way I could do it." But that gave me a whole different view on one how to tackle a problem. But I think more importantly was to genuinely understand that in order for you to be successful, you will not be able to do it alone. And it is not
Mm.
you who make it successful, but the people who surround you are the ones that make you successful.
I
And
think
that
that's
completely changed how things are. So leaders are really servants to the people that you lead and not the other way around. And that's how I felt that the sense of community, the sense of responsibility, and if I may say also the sense of that family in
mm.
that organization really, really showed. And yeah, to this day, I'm so grateful. One, obviously, to my wife because she kind of put me in place to kind of say how I should tackle it. But as I said, no, more importantly, to the people that have contributed to make this such a successful, I guess, execution.
Jimbo, I think we first want to thank you for that story. Even I think I felt a little bit of that goosebumps, imagining the numbers and how the time constraints that you had. And I just feel like you're giving us a lot in terms of understanding how broad leadership really is. Because you started sharing about the importance of respect as a leader and accountability for you let the other person realize accountability. But now with that last story, it talks about, well, I guess going back to respect with for any other person that you are working with, right? That allows you to collaborate and achieve greater success that you can imagine, right? None of those achievements you could have thought that you've done all by yourself.
No, thanks, Ronald. I really appreciate that. Oh. And siguro one other thing I wanted to add, right? Because the Philippines was one of the first countries to do a lockdown. That
Mhm.
model that we did became the baseline model of how the other
Sites.
countries where S&P Global it was present back then
Wow.
actually they based it on that because you can just imagine when the places were all locking down you can't say, oh, do we still have a Hertz available, or is Avis still there, or we didn't have that, right? So we really had
Right.
to see and rely on people, right, who would actually be able to help you. And yeah, but again, it became a model across the organization, and it's
So
fantastic.
definitely a smart move from your end. And yeah, again, regards to your wife who's definitely helped you in that moment. Well, when you mentioned about mentorship, is this part of your strategies in your People First? Is that correct? People Forward program?
Absolutely. One of the things that another backstory, when I was in City, I was in Citibank for 7 years, and along the way, City was considered or is considered the mecca of banking, right? If you may, right? A lot of City bankers are so successful in the different banks. They're now presidents, senior vice presidents. Some of them are part of the monetary board. All of these things.
Mhm.
So everyone wanted to go in City, and because of that mentorship program in City, that kind of is ingrained with us, right? And I remember during my stint there, it was only 7 years in City, but along the way, you would come up or you would get offers from other organizations. And one of the things that held me back was I didn't want to move to an organization knowing that I did not have enough skills or experience to become a mentor myself. So
Okay.
I give you that background, or I say that background because that is actually a premise to how I have developed my career as a mentor, right? Because
Right,
that was the
right.
premise, right? So when I moved to SPI Global or EPLD Ventus, I was going to be a senior leader in that office. I wanted to find out whether or not I would be an effective mentor myself. Because as I said, I've been blessed to have so many mentors that I want to make sure that I am also able to return that favor to mentor folks, right? So
Mhm.
again, I'm very fortunate that in the company that I transferred to, there was a lot of mentorship culture also on that front. So when I moved to S&P Global, there's also a good mentorship program. So we also continue to establish that. So in fact, we even put
Mhm.
metrics around it. It's not like, oh, can you be my mentor? No, there was a part wherein I remember a few years back, we established like a playbook. Who can be a mentor? What is a
Okay.
mentee's role, mentor's role? How do we do the check-ins, etc., and all of these other things, right? So it was kind of even a playbook that outlined how to execute an effective mentorship program. So it is really
Wow.
going to be part of it. So to the people who will listen to this, my advice is one: if you don't have a mentor, get one. The second advice I would have is don't just get two,
Get
and
to.
don't get a mentor who you report to, or a mentor who is part of your department or even part of your organization. Get a mentor who is not part of your organization or not part of your department, because
Mhm.
that also allows you to share stories or share questions and ask people about their experience without having to hold back because of maybe responsibilities within the organization or what can or that person may not say, right?
Mhm.
And more importantly, a different perspective, right? Get a mentor who is not like you.
Mhm.
Remember, if you find a mentor that's like you, then that's like talking to yourself. You know what I
Right.
mean? All you're gonna do is you're
Yes.
gonna be agreeing with each other. Get
Right,
get
right.
get someone that you find amazing and brilliant for sure, right? But kind of say, I like this person because I don't think like this person, but this person is brilliant. I want that person to be my mentor. Right? It
Right,
makes
right.
sense, right? Because again, no, if you learn from the same people,
It's the same banana, right? So
the same
it's not really
banana, right?
something new.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be that, what do you call that? It's not exactly progressive, but you don't get to see the other perspective,
The
right?
other
You wanted to
perspective.
have another perspective.
Correct. And aside from another perspective, you also want, and depending on what you want to have, no, the other part of having a mentor also is getting a mentor who is close to what you are trying to achieve. What do I mean? No?
Right.
You might say, but oh, Jimbo, but you just said try to get someone who is different. No? I'll switch it up a bit. No, not necessary. So, one of my advocacies is women empowerment. No, so
Mm.
I've spoken in several, win events and all of these other things. And when I do that, I always tell them you have to make life changing policies so that it really takes effect. No, just don't open a party and say, "Oh, we're doing a party." We're gonna no change policies, right? So, for example, in the office we have women in technology, right? So they ask me,
Mhm.
"Oh, Chico, you're an ally. What do you want to do? What do you propose?" Oh, so let's take a look at the challenges that our workforce, our women workforce in particular, have when it comes to breaking that glass ceiling, right? What are the
Mhm.
challenges? Oh, I'm a mother. Oh, I get pregnant, and all of these other things, right? So you try to work around those and say that shouldn't be a hindrance to getting the role that you want, right? So you
Mhm.
put policies in effect that, for
Right.
example, will give more flexible work arrangements to take into consideration because you don't want to take away being a parent, being a mother, because that person had to do work. So you try to create that environment that will allow them to be successful given the circumstances that are surrounding the environment that they work in or they operate
Yeah.
in, right? And then they'll ask me all of these things, right? But I tell them, don't only ask me, ask a woman who is successful in her particular role already, who is probably the president, vice president, CTO of a company,
Mm.
and ask
Yeah.
her how she did it. Because at the end of the day, I will never be a mother. I will never be get physically pregnant, right?
Right, right.
To say, oh, I completely understand what you're going through. I never say that, right? I will never be in that situation, right? So all I can do is listen and try to figure things out with them on how we best could implement certain policies and procedures to help that particular circumstance, for example, or alleviate that person from that particular circumstance. But I will never be in that person's shoes because I cannot do the physical things that they had to undergo. So my suggestion also, if that's the case, talk to someone who has done it, right?
Right.
So there, I
Um,
mean, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I actually goes back to my question earlier. Who did you had to look up to when we were? Because like that's like a very traditional question, right? When we were younger, who's your idol? Who? I've never understood that question really because I would rather think about what do you want to become, right? So if you try to correlate those two questions, it's trying to convert who do you want to become. So you don't really want to become like that, but it just so happens these people achieve what you would have liked to, right? So
Yeah,
they know the way there.
exactly right. And their way might not always be the exact way because again, no two people are exactly the
Exactly.
same, right? People are always unique. But the circumstances that have surrounded some of the challenges maybe that person had to go through are also
Mhm.
some of the challenges that you and I will go through, right? If you take that path, right? So you pick their brains, you try to understand that and all of these things. And one day there will come a point that it will actually be able to, you will be able to help, will be able to help you.
Jimbo, so far you've shared with us a lot of stories that I think basically it's all a reminder, right? Some of these are not new. Some of our viewers will probably have heard or seen these in talks one in one venue or another, but you've basically summarized it all for us here. One last thing, what would you say is your best mindset when as a corporate leader?
I wouldn't call it the best mindset in a sense that there are so many things. I always kind of give this generic statement that there's so many things that you have to keep in mind. But I guess I don't like to say that in this day and age because it always has been. In fact, it's part of the saying that if there's one thing that's certain, right, death and taxes and change, right? Change is inevitable, right?
Yes,
And I think
yes.
it just works. It's just so relevant these days because in the world, let's say, for example, AI disruptors,
Mhm.
all of these other things, right? The world is changing at a much faster pace than it ever was,
Right.
right? And these changes aren't almost always the same. In fact, a lot of them are new,
Mhm.
right? So the mindset of the ability to embrace these changes and adapt to these changes have to be there. They really have to be there, no? Some of these changes we will not like. Maybe most of them we will not like, especially if it becomes harder for us, right? There's a saying that we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think changes make this a feeling of ours, right? So if there's a mindset that I will, there's several, no? But yeah, mindset of embracing change. That's one, no? And then the second one, and I'll give maybe three because people understand already.
Sure.
Like what you said, this is nothing new. Embrace change,
Right.
adaptability. You've heard all of this, right? But I think that's so important. But related to it also is always have an open mind, have a growth mindset. We've learned
Mhm.
a lot of things, right? And no one can take that away from you. No one is going to take that away from you. But what we've learned, some of them we also have to unlearn, right? And then relearn. We have to have a
Right.
growth mindset, right? Because if we don't have a growth mindset, we will be stuck in our ways. And unfortunately, some of those ways, especially the hard skills, might
Mhm.
not be applicable already. So imagine if someone asks me, "Do you understand AI?" Oh yeah, I was doing Turbo Pascal and Turbo C++ as part of my programming back in college. That's obsolete, right?
Yeah.
But the analytical skills, the algorithm, the thinking never changes. So if you're going to learn Python nowadays, that behavior, that skill set does not change, but the
Mhm.
hard skill does. So learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's so critical. And last but not the least, and I say this not only in the workplace, have a mindset of resilience and grit. To me, these are so important with all of these changes, all of the learning, unlearning, and relearning, because it's hard work, right? And
Mhm.
if these changes are uncomfortable, resilience gives you the ability to bounce back from that particular adversity or that particular stress moment or that failure, right? Because you see the silver lining, you're resilient to it. You're resilient to change. So instead of being uncomfortable, you're actually comfortable with the change, right?
Right.
Because you're willing to adapt, you're resilient. And then more importantly is grit, because grit gives you the passion to persevere for long-term objectives. And that's what is going to get you through because you are persevering. You have that mindset that I want to accomplish it. I don't care what I have to go through. I know it is hard, but if I fail, I will fail fast. I will bounce back. I will persevere because I have grit. And
Right.
that,
Right.
even though if you're not a leader, even if you are an individual contributor, will work no matter the circumstance. And I have lived by those and I continue to I'm not an expert, but I've continued to see that mindset in all of the things that are happening that could help me kind of go through the different challenge I am faced, not only in the workplace, but in life in general. So I'll probably end with that, Ronald.
That was just beautiful. Thank you so much, Jimbo. That's a lot of beautiful words and backed up by your own stories and with the very passionate delivery as well. I felt that. I don't know about the others, but I really felt that. I did not notice the time. I
Yeah.
was really just as promised, it was just gonna be a free flowing conversation. I hope you enjoyed the time spent with
Yes. Well,
uh thank you once again. We'll give you back to your day,
yeah.
Jimbo.
Thank you
Thank you
also,
so
Ronald,
much.
for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to share some of my thoughts here. Please send my regards to Mary Chris and to everyone else in the team. But yeah, it was nice meeting you, and I hope this session is able to help you and your viewers later on. So thanks again,
We
and
hope so
thank
too.
Thanks
you.
again, Jimbo, for sharing your perspective on leadership, people culture, and building global careers right here in the Philippines. And to our listeners, I hope Jimbo's story reminds you that leadership isn't defined by titles, it's defined by heart, humility, and the courage to keep showing up. This is again Ron, and this is Work and Talk with PH, your go to podcast for lifestyle insights, career convos, and real estate realness, where chill convos meet real life lessons because hashtag it works.